G2 played a flawless CT side in 2 back-to-back maps to beat Team Spirit and win Blast World Finals. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what G2 is doing, how they're doing it, and if you stick around for long enough, I'm going to give you 3 tips that you can take into your own CT sides to make your defense better. If you're new to the channel, that's probably everyone. Hi, I'm Waldady, and I'm allegedly a professional commentator that's hired by very real and definitely not fabricated companies, so I feel like that gives me a pass to make shit up in the esports space. First thing I can't help but mention is that G2 greatly benefit on the CT side for one reason. Look at the stat line. It cannot be understated how important pistol rounds are when you're playing MR12. You can't have a flawless CT side without having a flawless pistol round. Also, just another thing I wanted to note here is that this is a perfectly even distribution of pistol round success in the entire tournament. They've gone 9-2 in pistol rounds both on the CT and terrorist sides. Pretty consistent. First, let's look at Mirage. You'll notice that they initially play a standard setup, but as their utility starts to fade, such as their ramp smoke going away, they quickly switch to a pretty heavy mid-exploration setup because their primary concern is not abandoning any information. Why? It's because if you let the pistols get too close, it becomes a toss-up, so they're prioritizing long-range duels. And you can see examples of this philosophy because the B player is jump spotting for advanced information, the mid players are searching, and Malbs is playing conservatively on A at range, and the only real concern is a walkout from ramp. As the timer runs down, they go back to bomb sites as mid is no longer a possible entry point. The reason G2 aren't starving for information in this next round is because of a clever smoke block by m0NESY. He gets to maintain mid presence, and when the B push comes in, Chopper is not ready for m0NESY to still be waiting to kill him. This is why the B push completely breaks down because there's no short pressure whatsoever. m0NESY also gets a nade smoke pop from a teammate to help him see through the smoke because when B pushes generally arrive, they are usually accompanied by short presence. Also, having someone like Hunter on short certainly makes it a hell of a lot easier to hold B, and that is just great shooting from him. Next up, you'll see the previous smoke block become a recurring theme. m0NESY does it again in round 16 as he buys himself a one-way here. And G2 love playing mid-heavy. The philosophy here is to make sure that mid is never given up and have players ready to rotate. They rely on cues such as smokes, flashes, and any other utility on A, and the jump spotter on B to anticipate bomb site pushes, but the one place where cues aren't generally enough is going to be mid. That's why they keep going for pressure. One thing to note is also how quick their comms is. As soon as they hear anyone in underpass, they know that the players won't be alone, and 4 CTs jump out to fight. m0NESY trusts that Malbs and Nico will be fighting underpass, so he'll be safe to challenge top middle. After multiple successful mid holds, you'll realize that G2 wants to stay 2 steps ahead. They recognize that an impenetrable and consistent mid defense from the CT side will make the Ts want to do something faster on a bomb site instead, which is why they switch up their playstyle in advance to account for it. Now, they rotate the op over to A in anticipation for a weaker buy because they need less players to hold off a mid push when they have a range advantage, and they can just instead station the op on A. Nico and Hunter will now hold mid, and it's cool that Zontix gets 2 kills, but m0NESY and Malbs have already done their job, and 3 are enough against 2 to end this round. While we're here, I'll also point out that Snax as their IGL has the simplest CT side role, so he actually gets to think about the moves they're making because B side defense is quite linear. You jump spot, you use your util, and you call for backup when you need it. Now this next round relies on the retake, but I think it's still cool to talk about the comms between m0NESY and Malbs. m0NESY acts as an invisible wall so that Malbs can find a 1v1. When Malbs is close enough and has the safety of the smoke, m0NESY throws a pop flash, and that makes the retake much easier with his kill onto Magix. Now in round 19, G2 is going to play a very basic setup. They know that a lot of time will have to be spent by Spirit because of the previous conditioning of heavy mid presence that they've shown. Now, they run down the timer, and as they start to worry that it could become a 3-prong attack from Connector, Palace, and Ramp, they minimize the number of angles they can get killed from by pushing Ramp, and once they have that space, they can just focus on Connector and Palace. Also, this round gets dangerously close, but it's m0NESY with a big stroke of luck as his run and gun pays off in the 1v1. Bravo. This last round is the dying breath of a team that has already decided that nothing is working. From an in-game leader's perspective, going back to an execute with no frills at all in the last round of a grand final is kinda like the equivalent of when you see a boxer get knocked out in the ring, but their hands keep throwing punches even though they're totally unconscious. I'm surprised this round even ever comes down to clutches, but G2 snag it anyway. So far, even though tactically I felt like G2 were making all the right moves, the superstar performers in the form of Donk and Zontix makes it much easier to at least make the rounds competitive, even if they consistently lose the post plants. Before we head into the next map, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, my parents. I'm still living in their wonderful home while pursuing full-time Counter-Strike, and if you click the subscribe button, the slightly inflated subscriber count will spark enough embers to produce 2 more YouTube videos before I'm eventually eclipsed by social and familiar responsibility that relegates me to a 52-hour work week in a cubicle somewhere until Counter-Strike is nothing but a diary entry and a bad excuse for a tattoo that I regret in my 40s. On to Anubis. I'm gonna skip over the pistol and the conversion. Here's the meat and potatoes of Anubis. G2 know that with the MP9s they haven't upgraded from to save their money, their best bet is to activate those SMGs. They instantly push into B main, and it's perfect. Meanwhile on middle, Nico traces the trajectory of the nade in his head, spams through the smoke to get the kill, and that round is already over. And with Spirit now only having one area that they can quickly lay their claim to, they're hoping that with 2 players on B and Nico on middle, A site doesn't offer as much friction, but they're simply fed to snacks. Now, they're gonna bunker down and they'll go full passive. Why do they do that? It's because they've conditioned Spirit with their aggressive plays. Spirit end up having to be much more elaborate and spend time with their default, which means that they get no info or control and they have to force themselves into A with no information with only 30 seconds left on the clock. A 3-man A setup is still somehow unsuccessful, even though it's a great read from G2. You have to bear in mind, G2 played this well tactically, but they still just didn't hold the bomb site, which came down to individual duels. However, the retake here is perfect from Nico and Hunter, because they have information that A, the clock is ticking down, and B, 2 of the Spirit players haven't entered the bomb site. They can safely take the fight because the plant will have to be forced, otherwise time runs out. And by the process of elimination, while Shiro is busy planting, they can isolate Chopper. Then he gets off the plant. This is again a disadvantageous duel, and obviously beyond this point the 2v2 is a bit of a 50-50, but to bring it to the 2v2 at all, that was just perfection being played out. There's not much to say about this last round, except that the confidence is infinite for G2 when they're dominating, and that Snax being a rock on A in this entire half is just highlighted even further by his instant double. By the way, a note for the viewers, Spirit only got 3 CT side rounds in the final map of the series as well, so I could have called this video 3 CT side rounds in 3 maps, but that would probably not be as cool as saying 0 rounds in 2 maps, so you gotta respect the YouTube grind. And if you've made it this far, here's the 3 main takeaways for your CT side. CS is not just a team game. Individual moments are gonna clean house, so you need to get good at the minor details. We saw multiple clutches from Nico, Hunter, and m0NESY. m0NESY was blocking smokes, Snax was being impenetrable on all the attacks against him, and the game would have been much closer if the individuals weren't popping off like that, so a good CT side will depend on solo plays. Regardless of how well drilled your team environment is, you cannot cheat solo improvement. 2, there's no one correct way of playing the CT side. We've seen how they played multiple setups, and they found success. Every type of CT side setup has its use and weaknesses and strengths and all that jazz. And the success percentages of what you're doing will completely change with every round. And lastly, Counter-Strike is a game of conditioning. A passive team will quickly have to become aggressive when they're being read, and vice versa. What you do in one round will inform the enemy team, and you're gonna have to adapt to their playstyle, and oftentimes you'll have to do it in advance, anticipating that they're going to be reading you. That's it for the breakdown. If you found this video cool, there's a button down there that's gonna bring you back to my channel when I make more stuff.